Pool. You play pool? This place have a pool table? You should. The game's a study. My dad, he put a table down in our basement when I was back in the second grade. He was climbing the ladder at CRW, at this top regional position upstate. He had this boss, this real Dilbert. This guy was the vice president of doing absolutely nothing, and he liked to play pool. So my dad, he takes the next 5 years of his life, 5 years, to learn this game. Every nuance of it, too. Eye movement, hand gestures, English, lateral English, 8-ball, 9-ball, 14.1, you name it. My dad could run the table 9 times out of 10. So the 5th year rolls around. I guess he thinks he's ready because he decides to take on this Dilbert boss of his, who turns out really couldn't play pool all that well, wasn't that smart, but he liked to gamble a lot. You can see where this is going, don't you? Dad beats this guy, takes him for $300-$400, but that, my friend, was that. My dad had played himself right out of the game, and he knew it that night. And that night, Jack came to the house. Daniels, you know. You have a light? I must have misplaced mine. He was no stranger to my family, though. Old Jack. My daddy's dad. My daddy's dad's dad. Aunt Ellie. Uncle Boone. Old Ben. He had a nose that looked like a red balloon. My daddy's brother. There were others. But that was the night he came to my house. Old Jack. Like it? It's Italian. Silk. Probably $80, maybe more. My daddy loved silk ties. One time, he bought one with gold threads in it. Seriously, gold. Precisely because he knew he couldn't afford it. But there was this guy at church, Patterson Jenkins. Tell me, what is it about the name Patterson that makes you want to grab the guy by the ears and pin him behind his head? Patterson. He was an executive downtown for a steel company, and my dad hated this guy. But he never missed a Sunday morning to stick his hand out and tell him what a great tie he had on, at which point Patterson Jenkins would begin to give him the goods. He'd say, oh, it's a Bulgaria, $140, cashmere. The President of the United States had... I mean, this guy was such a liar, man. My dad hated Patterson Jenkins. But he was determined to keep up with him, at least in terms of ties. My mom, on the other hand, she hated ties. No wonder. Daddy wrapped one around their neck one night. It was a Versace abstract, $92, but it nearly killed her. Thankfully, he came to his senses and let her go, but she suffered some brain damage. At least that's what I told her. She must have. She stayed with him. Yeah, he lightened up a little after that, but he still hit her sometimes. You know, most kids, they fantasize about going to Disney World. Me, I would just dream about getting up in his face and making him stop. Day after day, week after week, I'd confront that man in my head. It doesn't matter what goes on in your head, does it? Only matters what goes on out there in the real world where all the damage is being done. He'd come in at night, noisy, swearing, and then the hat rack would fall over, bang, bang, bang. Door slamming, everybody goes off to their battle stations, and then it became a game of hide and seek. High stakes. There was no safe place to go because you were already home. I'd curl up under my bed, listening. Every muscle so tight, like a guitar string. And these pictures would flash in my mind of me being bigger than he was, I'd be calm. I'd be patient, but I'd be firm. I'd say, sober up, Dad. Sober up, Dad. You got to stop hitting my mother. Gutless wonder. That's what he called me. I guess he was right. Just never had the guts. Never had the guts. Finally, he found some woman who really liked ties and didn't mind getting hit, I guess, because we looked up and the house was real quiet because he wasn't there. We held our breath for a week. There was this one sound, though. And it wasn't coming from us because we weren't playing, no talking, no TV, no nothing. But this one sound. And it was of my mom's scissors. That sharp little snip, 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 snip. She cut every one of those $100 ties up into slivers and squares. She sewed it together, made it into a small quilt a few years later, and took it down to the county fair and won a prize. She called it the Ties That Bind. She gave it to my son whenever he was born as a baby blanket, and he still carries that thing around with him everywhere he goes. That's one expensive baby blanket. Speaking of money, is my insurance going to be able to cover this? I forgot to check on it. And I know this is a 4-week program, but is there any way that I can get out in 3? Patterson Jenkins. I went to his funeral the other day. Should have seen the tie he had on. Doc, I don't know whenever I met Mr. Daniels, sly Mr. Daniels. My wife, she says, making the alcohol into a person is always a mistake. It makes it harder than it has to be. Like this thing is a friend. But that's what it's like. Just a friend trying to help you get through it. Always chasing you. My wife says that chasing feeling, and I get that all the time. That's not the liquor doing the chasing. That's God. And He hasn't given up on me yet. I have been praying a lot. I know that. But you wouldn't want to hear those prayers. The things I say to Him. I don't know. Maybe she's right. Faith. I've had it for years. A lot. A little. Who knows? But I just don't know if it's strong enough to get me through this. But if God wasn't looking out for me, then I'd probably be dead, right? What do you think? I'm part of this small group at church. Great group of people. And I'm so stupid. I came straight from the bar, and usually I can hold my liquor pretty well. But they asked me to say a prayer, and I couldn't get through it. Before I knew it, I don't know what happened. I guess I passed out. You know what? That makes it sound pretty bad. Worse than it actually is. No, that was pretty bad, I guess. Yeah, it was. And my friend, Mr. Jack Daniels, he wasn't friend enough to pick me up off the floor and give me a ride home. You know what? I can't do this. I don't have to do this. This was fun and all to be able to talk, but this was a mistake. Thank you. Thanks for your time. Nope. Maybe you can call this number here. This is my wife, Becky. And this number, too. It's Kyle Jenkins. He's Patterson's son. He's my friend from church. You could tell him he can end this fast. I'll see you, Jack. Okay, Doc. I'm checking in for real. Can I say just one more thing? I'm really terrified.